Hello and welcome to StarCast from Planet Waves. My name is Eric Francis Coppolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer here with the edition accompanying the horoscope for the 8th of August 2024. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a subscriber to Planet Waves. I am here with an update looking out ahead about 1 week. I'll be covering some of the longer-term developments that are now at their peak, and then taking this discussion out through the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter in Gemini. But I'm a little bit ahead of myself. At the moment, I am laying low a little bit, not writing major articles, and I am not doing Planet Waves FM for a couple of more weeks, just doing a little bit of personal healing work and giving myself a moment to be introspective. It is lovely being ahead on the horoscope, so I can take some of this time without the pressure of having to deliver this rather spectacular 2,000-word extended weekly reading. It's all done. It's very nice. The Leo birthday reading is going to happen. I may have already done it by the time you hear this, but if not, it will be soon. As my clients and the customers of my readings know, as much as I'm committed to doing things on time, it is more important that I do them when I'm in the correct state of mind, when I am ready. So if I am feeling any stress or dealing with any personal disturbance, I put that kind of work on hold because I don't want to, spread that into my audience, any, concerns, anxiety, and then that also helps me keep my focus inward. This is sensitive work that I'm doing, and while not everyone is so deeply affected by what they hear me or any other astrologer say, there are certainly people in the audience, and I know this because I have been one of them, who are kind of hanging on every word that an astrologer says. That's how, tenuous their situation is, and so I am aware of that, particularly as an avid reader of the Sally Brompton horoscope. That's the one go-to that I have in astrology these days. I know how meaningful it can be, and therefore I want to make sure that I'm in the right frame of mind when I seek in any way to influence another person's consciousness, another person's thoughts. So, greetings from a kind of a quiet, damp evening here. I'm working on Wednesday evening at about 5:48 p.m., approximately. I didn't add in the seconds. And I want to start with a development that is taking place today. It's actually exact at 11:12:05 p.m. on Wednesday Eastern Time. So by the time most of you are hearing this on Thursday, it will have passed, but its energy signature has not passed, and I think that it's a defining moment of the week. In fact, this is one of the very rare times when I have written a weekly or any other horoscope based on a chart that occurred in the past. And so really the last 2 weeks have been based on this chart, and that includes the horoscope of the 8th because it's just such a truly unusual setup. And what the setup looks like is, as we know, Mercury is retrograde. It's retrograde in Virgo. Talked a lot about that last week, talked about the Sabian symbols involved. And I may have gone over this in part already. And then Venus entered Virgo. And then the two of them are forming a conjunction exactly aligned with this unusual thing called trans-Pluto. Now, I mentioned from time to time, and I'm being a little more bold about it, that I use a set of planets that do not have bodies. They're called the Uranian points, or the Witte points, W-I-T-T-E, Witte from German, or the, what else are they called? The trans-Neptunian points. They're not planets. They've got a lot of trans-Neptunian bodies. They're called Cubewanos and Plutinos. They include Pluto. But way back in the day, late 19th century, early 20th century, some astrologers in Germany needed more points to work with. And somehow, I do not know how, I have not found anyone who can actually explain this to me. And I know some pretty advanced Uranian astrologers and have been influenced by them for my entire career. No one really knows how these things were actually cooked up. But the point that I'm talking about today, trans-Pluto, is not one of them. There is a ninth point without a body. And it is called trans-Pluto. Again, it does not actually exist anywhere except in the minds of astrologers, the charts of astrologers, astrology books, and as I invoke the concept in this discussion. And I've looked into that. That one's a little bit easier to track. It's a 20th century development. And it is kind of an amalgamation of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And it's shown in the chart. You can see it with a little red circle with a slash through it. And some people call it Isis, but there's an asteroid called Isis. And I love this thing. I've cast it into every chart since my software included it. Now the company's defunct, but the Time Cycles Research Series, the IO series of astrology programs, at some point like 15 years ago, they included trans-Pluto. And so I thought, well, why not? Let's start checking it out. And so what we've got right now happening is retrograde Mercury conjunct Venus, conjunct trans-Pluto, and they are all conjunct at 3 minutes and 3 degrees and 44 arc minutes. All 3 points. One moving retrograde, that would be Mercury. One moving direct, that would be Venus. And one creeping through the zodiac at the rate of about 75 years per sign. And they are all going to line up from where I'm sitting about 6 hours from now at 11:12 p.m. This is an extraordinary thing to see. Astrology is a study in synchronicities. That's the only way it could possibly work. There's no way that all mathematics are, influencing events on Earth. It's synchronous. It's the miracle of the universe. Basically, there's no, as far as I'm concerned, and I've been at this for long enough to have an opinion, maybe not worth considering, but there's no causation by these planets. Sure, the full moon, that's like right nearby, and the seasons affect us. But as far as these remote points, we're talking about this thing that Carl Jung discovered, which is meaningful acausal coincidence, right? There's no reason this should be. It's certainly meaningful if I've got anything to say about it. And there's, and it's a coincidence, but it's a beautiful one. And so if we want to know what this is about, I think, my method of mundane astrology is look at the world first and see what's going on in the world. What's happening on the planet? Well, let's see. Stock market tanking, cryptocurrency tanking, all kinds of interest rate concerns. I'm seeing, but not carefully following, activity on the kind of Team No Virus COVID list, like the kind of last surviving actual COVID truthers list. It includes it's not very active, but we're all copied in. It's pretty much the monkeypox group from a couple of years ago, and I'm the token journalist coming along for the ride. And a few people have stealth press cards. They carry around Planet Waves FM Pacifica press cards, but Doa knows who they are, except for Jeff Strahl. And so we can see that there's something here. And the thing with trans-Pluto is that my take on it, without having to, summarize like this 20-page delineation by Lynn Coiner. It's easy to find. Do it on a computer, please. It's a long article. It's called Trans-Pluto is Real. Quote, Trans-Pluto is Real by Lynn Coiner. And my distillation of trans-Pluto is that it's about specificity and a narrow opening. And it can also be kind of conical, like looking down the wrong end of binoculars. It can represent some form of overfocus. It has a Virgo-ish critical quality to it. It happens to be in Virgo, but I think it's a bit Virgo-ish in nature. And a lot of these points will take on the properties of the sign they're in, kind of like tofu absorbs the sauce that it's in. You could say, oh, that tofu tastes a lot like garlic. Well, it's a coincidence. It's been cooking in garlic for the past 20 minutes. So there's a bit of cosmic tofu to trans-Pluto, a bit of cosmic tofu to retrograde Mercury, and in reality, the theme of the sign influences the planet. It's how you read. It's like the planet's got a concept, the sign's got a concept, the house has got a concept, and then there's aspects. And so we've got this thing kind of simmering away in Virgo, and it happens that prices are falling. And that with Venus, that makes sense. And with retrograde Mercury, that makes sense. And then this looking down the wrong end of the binoculars effect of trans-Pluto also adds something interesting to the mix. So keep that in mind, and the theme of specificity. Now, opening up my copy of An Astrological Mandala by Dane Rudhyar, that is to say, the book of the Sabian symbols, which I've been working with more. I kind of set the Sabian symbols aside for a while, but in doing something like an astrology podcast, it's nice to have accessible information that's non-technical, that's imagistic. And so one thing that this Sabian symbols thing is, probably mentioned it a lot more last week. That was a while ago, especially these days, it is a image or concept for each degree of the zodiac. So there's 360 of them. And it was, I think, cooked up in 1920 by the Reverend Dr. Mark Edmund Jones, not the current Mark Jones, but the Reverend Dr. Mark Edmund Jones, who somehow was peripherally associated with Dane Rudhyar, who then rewrote this channeling by Jones and a woman named Elsie Wheeler, a kind of funny, she was wheelchair bound, but her name is Wheeler. And they sat in a park in San Francisco one day, I think in 1920, and kind of randomly channeled these 360 symbols. And then they put them in order, and they all kind of shuffled out. So I'm reading from my ancient copy from 1994 that looks more like it's from 1894, but it's only from 1994. And the symbol of the fourth degree of Virgo, where this takes place, 344, takes place in the fourth degree. The thing to remember with these symbols is that there's no year zero, there's no 0th degree. So when a planet is at like 1 arc minute of Virgo, it's in the first degree of Virgo. And it's at 1 degree and 1 arc minute of Virgo, it's in the second degree. So when something's at 344, it's in the fourth degree. And at Virgo 4, we get the symbol, black and white children play together happily. The overcoming of sociocultural prejudices. And Rudhyar sums it up as brotherhood, and I'll just read a little bit from it. And this is written in the 60s, so they use the word man, which I'm objecting to less than I used to. But anyway, I'm going to keep it in the original. The ideal universal brotherhood underlies all great spiritual teachings, for they are all like branches of the one tree, man, humanity, in his divine state. This does not mean there are no racial differences, but rather these differences have a functional value in terms of the whole organism of man and the planet Earth. We're all part in the symphony, right? The cellos and the violins can get along just fine. And the guy who's spent his whole career learning how to play the triangle can get along just fine with the person who spent their whole career learning how to play the timpani drum. So it's a child of God theme. We're all children of God, and that's a nice thing to have. And I would add further that it is my view, from having watched this stuff go on now for a long time. I was pretty politically aware around the time that Nixon resigned, so that we're going back 50 years. All of this division is foisted on us. People would get along much better if they weren't constantly told to be hating each other all the time. I think generally people want to get along and buy and sell their vegetables and you know what I mean, like feel safe and feel like we belong on the planet. So we are being manipulated into all of the prejudice and the hatred that we see and we experience. It is all coming basically out of public relations labs and think tanks and the press, doing anything that it can to piss people off and turn us against each other. All right, so having presented for quite a while on the conjunction of retrograde Mercury conjunct Venus conjunct trans-Pluto, let's move on for a second. So there's a lot of conjunctions brewing. Most of them are long-term, slow conjunctions, but one of them that's happening right now is what I've been calling the Capricorn group. And the Capricorn group is a group hanging out at about 7 degrees of Capricorn, and it includes Pholus. That's really the main driver of energy in this group. Pholus is the second Centaur planet. It was the Centaur planet right after Chiron, but there was like a 12-year gap, and 1992 to 1977, 15-year gap. Chiron discovered in 1977. Pholus discovered in 1992. And with Pholus, they decided, there is a group of these planets called centaurs. There's a lot of them. I only use about 5 or 6 of them. And practically speaking, I use 3, 4. But Pholus is an important one. Pholus is the small cause with the big effect. First of all, that's one thing with Pholus. Another, Pholus is the pressurized release. Also, Pholus is 3 generations. And also, Pholus is the legacy of alcohol in the family and how that colors all the emotions. So we've got all this thematic stuff bound up in one planet. And this is the beauty of the new planets. In the old planets, there's no convenient way to read an essential theme in the world. This is not some kind of obscure thing like, the relationship between iron and tin. This is not something out of alchemy. This is something straight out of our lives, which is the multi-generational problem of alcohol abuse and how that's passed on, and then how we become in the face of this multi-generational alcohol abuse. Plus, there's a lot of small cause and big effect stuff happening, and so you've got to watch both of these when Pholus is active. You've got to keep an eye on these issues, particularly the small cause and the big effect issue, and not underestimate the scale of the effect that a seemingly small cause can have. So this group, and I've given a couple of presentations on it in past Starcasts, they're easy to find, or if not, just go back about 3 weeks and listen to them if this topic interests you at starcast.fm. It's joined by Quaoar. Anybody speak Tongva? Tell me how to pronounce that. That's about the tribe going all the way back to the beginning as opposed to the great-grandparents. Ixion, the suspension of or lack of all morality, and then Cupido, the gathering of groups, also the artist. These are all together, and right now we are in the peak of this cluster of points being square the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes are at 740 as of right now, and God, speaking of precise, Pholus is at 740 right now. So this is it. This is the one time we are at right now. In fact, as I speak, this is exact at 11 o'clock tonight. All these points are in motion. That Pholus is going to be square the lunar nodes to the degree 7 and the minute 40. That's incredible, particularly given this is simultaneous with all 3 points in Virgo being at 3 degrees and 44 minutes. They're like in the same place in different dimensions, however you want to think of that. So what I'm seeing here is that a lot hinges on this balancing point of Pholus square the lunar nodes, and Ceres is now backing into this grouping, into this little minor planet asterism, and Ceres is making it real. Ceres is making it about an actual emotional experience. Ceres is making it about food, not making it like making it, but in the storyline. The character series is bringing those themes into the storyline. And so we are right at the linchpin, I guess, I don't know if that's a good word, of this thing that I've been writing about since June when I was talking about the family Hunger Games. I will link to this article from the Substack page and also from the StarCast page. Just got to remember to do that. And so here we are. We're right in this moment. And what my take is that it should be easier to see certain very difficult to see issues for what they are. And it should be easier to get to the small cause leading to the big effect and understanding what this is actually about, and to work with a small solution with a big effect. Small cause with a big effect, you might not be able to have a big solution to that, but for example, something like homeopathy is very helpful in dealing with problems that have a small cause and a big effect. And usually when we're talking about homeopathy, there's some disturbance to the vital force. So this is about clearing up what that is about. If you're looking at the chart, and I will scan this chart in, the group that I'm talking about, the little cluster, is on toward the upper right-hand part of the chart. And in all the charts I'm publishing, I'm adding a little streak in kind of orange-red next to it, so you can see this group for what it is. 2 of them are printed by the program, and then 3 of them are drawn in: Ixion, Quasar, and Cupido, since my program doesn't publish those. Okay, so now another conjunction forming, and this is happening over the course of the next week, is Mars in Gemini approaching a conjunction to Jupiter in Gemini. Mars creeping along right now at 0.6 degrees a day. So Mars is slowing down. There's going to be a Mars retrograde in December, I think around December 4th. And along the way to that, Mars is passing through Gemini, and it is about to be, well, it is conjunct. Right now the conjunction is, let's see, it's 4 degrees. So this is a 4-degree applying conjunction is definitely a conjunction that is happening. So Mars is at 12 Gemini and 16, and Jupiter is at 15 Gemini 36. So that means that with Mars creeping faster than Jupiter, they'll be conjunct in a week on the 14th at about 11:20 in the morning. And this is interesting because, first of all, they're both square Saturn, and that's got that last chance feeling. That's that any sense of desperation that you're feeling, any sense of like, oh my God, it's do or die, now or never. That feeling will be enhanced by the Jupiter-Saturn square. That's a fairly rare event. The Jupiter-Saturn square, I think, happens once every 10 years. And now it is happening with Jupiter square Saturn, with Mars right there. Plus, the whole business is aligned with this deep space point that I frequently talk about called the Great Attractor. And by the way, I'll occasionally dip into the fixed stars if necessary, like the Trump pretend assassination. There was Algol showed up, and I needed somebody to tell me that. But in this chart method that I use, where I'm using all the solar system objects that we know about, and then a whole bunch of minor solar system objects in our solar system, I make sure I have 3 points in the chart that are not in our solar system. This is for orientation. This is to have the whole business aligned with the greater reality of the universe. And one of those points is the center of our galaxy. Like, I'm always lining the chart up with the center of the galaxy. Once early on in my astrology career, I wrote a kind of a rant for Rob Brezhny's website, which I didn't intend to get published, but it was on the website for years, called Astrology as the Art of Bullshit. And he loved it, and it was on his website for years, and I probably met some of you from that article. But what I said was, and what about the galactic center? Like, how is it that the galactic center is just not this normal thing used by astrologers? So I have used it since I knew it existed, and it provides a point of orientation because our sun is orbiting the galaxy. Then I use a the biggest nearby galaxy, that's called M87, Messier 87, cataloged God knows when. Let's see when Messier was in business. I hope this is interesting. But it gives I do such a complex form of astrology, and yet my messages are so down to earth. I want you to know what I'm doing. So let's see. Messier 87. Messier 87 is an elliptical gallery in the constellation Virgo, so it's part of the Virgo group, which is part of Laniakea, the Great Attractor. I'm going to get into that. And it is a absolutely, positively enormous galaxy. It contains several trillion stars. One of the most massive galaxies in the local universe. It has a population of globular clusters, about 15,000 little galaxies around it compared to 150 to 200 orbiting the Milky Way. So this thing is, it is Phil Sedgwick calls it the super galactic center. It's at about one degree and change of Libra. Let me tell you exactly where that is. Well, Tracy changed the name of what she calls it. Fine. When we set up Serenu, Serenu.com, SERENNU, one of the great resources in the history of astrology, programmed by Tracy Delaney, who has done the impossible, walking on water, then turning the water into wine to get this program to do these calculations. What she's calling the Virgo cluster, really that means M87, which is the heart of the Virgo cluster. 1 degree 16 Libra, adjust for the tropical zodiac. It's actually back in kind of early Virgo. So I use that as a point of orientation. These are serious points. That my astrology is tethered to 3 big deep space points. The third one is the Great Attractor. That's an even bigger point. That's the one that's pulling us and M87 and Andromeda and the whole bunch of other galaxies all toward mid-Sagittarius. People get confused because cancel that. M87's in Libra. But the Great Attractor and the galactic core are both in Sagittarius. They're both in approximately the same direction. But going to the galactic center at a mere 25,000 light years is kind of like running out to 7-Eleven to get a bottle of Pepsi and some ice cream, whereas the Great Attractor is like getting on a rocket ship and like flying to another planet. Is very far away. It's in the hundreds of megaparsecs. So I'm not sure why I got into all explaining all of this, but of course, Mars right now and through the week is going to be opposite this megaparsecs distant thing far, far, far away. Not even a galaxy far, far, far away. A thing attracting to it 100,000 galaxies long ago and far away. Mars is right there. And so there's a lot of influences to this thing, but it is very, very Sagittarian. You can pursue it, and it just keeps going. You never really catch up with it. That about does it for today. Keep your eye on Mercury retrograde ball. I will send a notice out when I have the Leo studio recorded, working in audio. And we'll soon have an announcement about the 2025 annual readings. Thank you for joining me tonight. And thank you for subscribing to Planet Waves. Lots of love, and bye for now.